Hi, and welcome to the Human Side of Business podcast. I'm Ange McCabe, CEO and co-founder of Intuitive Performance. I'm a performance coach, HR professional, whole person leadership facilitator, and your host. The Human Side of Business podcast is fueled by the genuine curiosity to understand how personal characteristics and skills can be leveraged to drive individual and team performance, tangible outcomes, and ultimately organizational success within business. Each podcast is devoted to sharing knowledge, expanding our learning edges, and exploring the trends in corporate culture towards growing the emotional intelligence of organizations. I'm so glad you're here. Hey, Brett, a warm welcome to the Human Side of Business podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure for sure. I'm looking forward to diving into our topic today around championing change to creating a thriving workplace. But before we do that, I want to introduce you and warm you up to our subscribership here today, Brett. So everyone, I'm really excited to have Brett Barlow on the show. He is the co-founder and CEO at Every. Every is a fintech company that's really disrupting the way that we pay our team members by way of the essentially making it easier to pay workers instantly versus the 2-week pay cycle. Brett has over 25 years of experience leading SaaS businesses and consumer brands, and he's responsible for business and go-to-market strategy, future planning, company culture, strategic partnerships, and he's also led the company in raising just over 14 million through seed and Series A financing rounds. And basically, as of April 2020, or since then, essentially has tripled its revenue in the last 3 years. I think it was. Correct me if I'm wrong, Brett.
That's correct.
He's also had an impressive track record in leadership, in roles in places such as Skull Candy, which he grew them to a 500 million brand and led through their IPO, as well as another company, or I guess the most recent company on his resume, Pluralsight, who he's also successfully led to or through an IPO. From an awarding perspective, Brett has been named the Marketing Executive of the Year by the American Business Awards and Sales and Marketer of the Year by Utah Business Magazine. And finally, within the last month, he's named the top CEO of the year by the Utah Business Magazine. So a very warm welcome to you, Brett.
Well, that was an incredible introduction. I appreciate that. Thank you. It makes me feel old if I say
Right. I find it much easier when other people introduce me because I tend to make jokes and almost push away the compliments and say, this is what my best friend or mom would say, or this is what my resume identifies with me. Yeah, exactly. But
well, I mean, none of those things happen award wise or taking companies public without a really great team around you. No one person is doing that alone. So sometimes there's people that are singled out. I was singled out on a couple of occasions, but those things don't happen without the support and camaraderie and work of the others around me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're on the same page for that as well. So let's dive right in. You had a really interesting thought process around transforming change within organizations. And I'd like to just kind of jump off with, what is your current beliefs around that topic?
Well, when I've joined certain companies that feel like they're, should I say, rudderless, like a big kind of market opportunity, but not sure who they are, where I found change coming from is you just kind of strip away everything and you get to the roots of, what do you believe? What do you stand for? How do you behave? And really aligning on those things. And it really helps with decision making. And, as a small business, one of the things that's the most challenging isn't really, it's what to say no to. Everything when you're trying to grow revenue, if you're not really focused, feels like an opportunity. You can get distracted with your product roadmap and your other things. So there's a couple of things that, that I've learned, and these are not my original ideas, but I'm a big fan of Patrick Lencioni, and there's Brene Brown, and there's honestly, I don't think I'm a maverick in this sense, but I've adopted and kind of just maybe curated it a bit to work for me. But I think one of the biggest kind of impetus for change in a business is one, just having trust
Mm,
as a base, right? Because if you don't have trust, then you're not working as a team. There's infighting, or constantly questioning what's happening. And then I think what trust allows you to do is because you're inevitably going to have conflict, you're going to have arguments or differences of opinion, which in many ways is very healthy to
mhm.
kind of debate your way into the right place. But with trust, those conflicts can happen in a healthy way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm a strong
So,
believer that, in my world, there's no such thing as conflict, rather conversations or maintenance conversations. Because when you have the ability to build trust with your team, it's really focusing on, I feel, the connectivity and understanding that we're all looking to accomplish or move towards the same thing.
mhm.
And it's really important to, I think, from a leadership perspective, keep people on track, but agreeing with you in that trust and in championing change is really important.
Yeah, I think you need to give people the room to not only be themselves personally, but to spread their wings and take accountability professionally without
Mm,
micromanaging. So, as a CEO, what I believe the one of my primary jobs is responsibilities is to set that vision of where do we go, where are we trying to go in a quarter, in a year, in 5 years. Who are we as a company, and what do we believe in, and how do we behave, kind of all those things. I believe I need to lead through that.
yes.
And I empower the various department leaders to say, okay, well, Brett's pointed to XYZ top of X mountain, and I'm going to get there when, like, it's a 90-day timeline, but I'm taking a four-wheeler to get
Mm,
up to that mountaintop. And then when I have another lead, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to meet you up there too, and we're going to do what we need to. But I think actually the best way is to hike it, because we can go off trail. Like, I'm using that as an example of just like the independence to operate individually with
yes.
your people. But, I'm going to trust you to do that. But in 90 days or in 6 months, whatever it is, I'm going to be up there, and if you need to commit to me that you will meet me there, however you choose to be there, and it needs to be done in the way that benefits the company. And I think people really appreciate that level of
Mm,
trust, and that gives them accountability into what they're doing as well. Like they own it.
yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And what would you say as you're collectively moving up the mountain as a team? Can you point to one thing or a trend that allows your team to stay on track?
Well, there are many different tools for that. Google brought out OKRs, and there's certainly goal setting and things. What we do is we create what we call our executive playbook,
Yes.
which has our values and our mission, as well as each department's kind of main objectives for the years, and then for the year, and then the metrics that we believe most impact our business, what we
Hmm.
need focused on throughout the year. So we use that as a guide, but then we revisit it throughout the year and make adjustments to it. And then we have our weekly executive team meetings where we're referencing it, and we're challenging each other, or we're saying, are we on track here? Are we red, yellow, green? Who needs help? And so that playbook helps guide also our decision making, as I kind of mentioned before.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think partnership comes and they say, okay, well, if you change your roadmap completely, we'll give you X amount of dollars. And that can be really tempting. You got to kind of come back to your roots and say, does that fulfill our mission? Is it what we're trying to accomplish? Is that what we've agreed to is important to the business? Yes or no?
Mm,
So I think alignment with your teams early in the year, even before the new year, is really helpful to just kind of keep as a kind of a light touch map throughout the year to keep on track.
Definitely. And I think what I'm trying to point at is what I'm seeing with particular leadership clients, coaching clients, groups that I facilitate with, they're very much behind the collective OKRs or rocks, depending on what they subscribe to.
Yeah.
And they're very much about having the quarterly meetups or check-ins. But what I'm seeing is that there's pressures and or distractions or an opportunity to increase habits to stay consistent along, I guess, along those inroads or in maps as you wait to get to your next kind of peak, right? Or quarterly check-in. So I'm curious to understand, based on your experiences, how do you assist your team members to create those positive performance habits to maintain that alignment?
Well, I don't think I'm perfect at that. I think that there's
Well, we're
always,
all human, right?
I mean, I've tried a lot of different things. What I find is the most helpful is frequent contact and being in a virtual world like we are now, where
Mm,
as a flexible workspace or kind of work philosophy. So maybe we're together 10% of the time and 90% of the time we're in our home or wherever we, might be.
mhm,
So the pandemic in a way was a forcing function for better behavior as far as what you're talking about. Because you kind of take for granted some of those things in contact and communication when you're right in the office, where you have to be very intentional when you're
mm,
not in the office. So we
mm,
have weekly executive team meetings in person. We try to do our, everybody does, all leaders do one-on-ones every week with their team members, and not always in person, but when possible, in person. So
mhm,
there's that. It's like you're making micro adjustments instead of going long periods of time. And then all of a sudden you're realizing 2.5 months down the road that the train is completely off the rails and is going in a different direction. We're able to keep really, to the best of our ability, tight alignment and making those, as I said, micro adjustments to stay on course. Because you can't believe that the goals you set in October for the following year or December for the following year are going, like, businesses change. So you have to be
mhm.
adaptable to that and be okay with that. And as long as it still is pointing towards what you've agreed to is your committed mission and vision and strategy, it's okay to change, I think, those OKRs or those rocks midstream. Like,
Absolutely.
this is not accomplishing what we're trying to make it happen. And I give people the ability and the independence to make those decisions.
Mm,
What
mm,
I hate are surprises.
mm.
I
Yes.
do not like coming. So I've been waiting on the mountaintop to just kind of keep with that theme.
Yes.
And somebody's 3 days late, and all of a sudden they call from halfway down the mountain, like, "Hey, we're not going to make it." You know, that's that shows to me a lack of attention to detail, communication, and that's a performance issue that
Yes.
is really, I strongly, I just can't stand when that happens. I'm
Mhm,
okay if things are delayed. I'm okay if things are off track, if I'm kept informed on the situation as we're going, because then I can make decisions because those actions impact other parts of the business, and I'm informed so I can adjust other things, as needed.
mhm.
But staying in close contact is really important for that alignment.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. There's three major things that has kind of come out of what you're saying here, Brett, and bear with me as I digest. So one is ensuring that you're keeping the overarching goals front and center. So it's more of a habit. It's a regular conversation. It's brought up in multiple meetings. It's not like you're setting it and forgetting it. From a performative perspective, it sounds to me like you're also empowering your team members that as long as we're getting to the end result, they have the autonomy and the wherewithal and will to be able to slightly change the course to ensure that they're accomplishing their goals or their rocks. And I think that's amazing. The other larger point at more of like a 60,000 foot look when it comes to performance management specifically, or performance reviews, I should say, and setting goals, a lot of companies are still of the mindset of we set it and this is what it is. And it almost contravenes the current environment. And that's where a lot of natural tensions can come into leadership, team member relationships, because things change and switch. And then the onus is on the employee to debate why they didn't achieve what they achieved, or to debate why they had to do X, Y, Z. And so I think it's a really important point that you made, Brett. And to you, it rolls off the tongue like it's common sense, but it's not so common in the sense that being able to pivot, to have stretch goals, to have laggard goals, those are all very important changes or things to keep on our radar, because we are in a hybrid environment. There's so many things that are changing. And so it's really important to keep those conversations going. And that falls in alignment with goal setting as well.
Yeah. And the size or scale of your business, I think that approach is different for different stages of the business. So for us as a true startup, I was involved with writing the idea on a napkin. I mean, from there to a workable prototype to a product, I think being agile and following what we've just been talking about is incredibly important. Once you become Apple or Coca-Cola or Nike, they pretty much know exactly where they are, and it's more about efficiencies within what they're doing.
Absolutely.
And maybe, I mean, growth is important to every business, but it's more about efficiency rather than building.
Yes.
And so, the way they manage those goals at a larger company are just different than I think about it. And I've been in both scenarios.
Right.
Think about it in a startup. So being self-aware to where you're at. One challenge that I see is people coming from really large companies to join a startup and then trying to infuse what they've been doing for the last 15 or 10 years at an enterprise business into a startup, and it slows everything down. It's
Absolutely.
too heavy for that stage of business. So I think that's part of the CEO's responsibility, is know who you are, know what stage you're in, and work out a way that can be most efficient to keep on track with your team based on the position or the size scale of your business.
And circling back to the thought process around transformative change, one thing that has kind of been coming up as we've been chatting about is when it comes to this remote hybrid working environment, what have you done, or what have you seen, or what's coming up for you in the sense of ensuring connectivity? And the second piece to that question is, have you changed the way that you influence change based on the changed environments?
Yeah, well, I think that clearly has happened because I've always worked in an office. So my entire thought process has had to change over the last 3 years.
Right.
One, being remote has allowed us, one huge benefit of it is it has allowed us to recruit people from all across the country. We're based in Salt Lake City, Utah, a wonderful state, great place to raise a family, do business. It's a great place to be, but it's not the most diverse state around. That's just, it's just not. It's not as diverse as other states. It's just not a demographic. So working remotely has allowed us to hire, different genders, like women, not just all white men that are in the business, different religious backgrounds, you could name all of the things, but it has allowed us to hire people in Dallas, Texas, in Portland, Oregon, in, Los Angeles, that come from all different lifestyles, backgrounds, and things like that. And that has helped, with that hybrid situation. So with that, I think new ideas come.
Absolutely.
All look the same. If you've all had kind of the same upbringing, you're kind of like, well, this is how I was raised or whatever. And there's a lot of similarities there. When you get that diversity within your business, I think it really helps to kind of infuse the ability or the desire for change. It feels like, oh, I haven't heard that before. That's interesting. And it makes change less scary because somebody has, done it at a different company and they just kind of have some different ideas. So
Mm-hmm.
that's probably, I try to get us for those that are in person together as, moderately as frequently as possible, but it's usually like once a week that we're together. But we do monthly town hall meetings where we review these playbooks and we explain to the company where we're at and different departments report. I have, as I said, weekly executive team meetings where my whole team happens to live in Utah. So we
Mm-hmm.
meet in person. And then I ask for weekly one-on-ones with people. So, and I think you have to be more rigid about having some of those connections in order to in the virtual work environment that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
Those
Mm-hmm.
are those are a couple of things that I've seen kind of as the work life work world has changed over the last couple of years.
Right, right. So what I'm hearing is, revisiting company programs and or policies, being more rigid around one-on-one meetings to ensure that there's connectivity and constant communication around what the ongoing changes are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're not careful, it can you in the virtual world, you can get siloed really quickly because it's like, it's not so easy to just meet somebody in the kitchen or grab
Mm,
someone for lunch or just have a casual conversation. You're setting up meetings. And so you typically just do that with the people that you're doing your work with.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So it's, that's challenging to do that
mm-hmm.
cross departmentally. And I
Right.
don't think we've cracked that code.
Mm-hmm,
It's something that we need to continually work on.
mm-hmm.
Uh, but I've considered things like um, having cross-functional one-on-ones with people that are maybe in a same project, but that are in a different department.
Yeah.
Um, mentorship programs
Mm-hmm.
where people can request to be mentored by an executive or someone that's just a little bit more senior than them from a different department.
Mm-hmm.
So I think some of those programs can be implemented that can help with that.
Absolutely. And when you're thinking about your leadership team, what type of skills do you want to or continue to elevate to ensure that they're in alignment with your vibe or brand of transformational change and growth?
Yeah. Well, a lot of people say that culture comes from the CEO. Like it starts from the top and it comes down. And I agree with that to a point. I try to live the culture and I try to lead by example with that, but I can't be everywhere. So I have to have, advocates or evangelists in the executive team
Mm-hmm.
that are holding themselves accountable, and
Mm-hmm.
even their subordinates are holding themselves accountable or other people. So you might be an individual contributor and no executives are in the room and someone says something that maybe feels out of turn. And if an individual contributor can say, hey, I know you're kind of new here, but we don't really talk to each other like that. You can get
Right.
your across differently here, and this is kind of our core values. So starts with me for sure, but it has to be lived throughout the whole organization because I can't be everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think I've found that to be highly successful because people live it and they believe it. And it's not just like a poster on a wall in a break room. It's just like kind of just behavior. Like this is just how we act. We're
Mm-hmm.
accountable. We work hard. We like to have fun. We're kind to each other. And, jerks don't necessarily, succeed here. If you're a jerk,
Mm-hmm.
then, you might go find a jerky company, because we're not those people. We don't want to act that way. So,
Right, right, right. And I enjoy where you're coming in from because again, oftentimes I've seen leaders and or companies spin the wheels in the sense of how do we continuously communicate the expectations I've had leaders come to me in past and they were like, well, I've told them to do this. And so what I'm hearing from your desk, Brent, is that it's really important that you're not just owning it, but you're doing it. And then you're also, I don't want to say, yeah, you're also influencing others how to be champions, to do the same, in the sense of it's almost like a social culture versus a policy orientated operation.
Yeah, and that goes to kind of the size of the business again, right? Like when you have
Absolutely.
100,000 employees, it gets pretty policy driven, and there's some of those things just happen.
Yes.
At our stage of the business, I don't know if you have children. I have three children, and I don't think they listen to a word I say. I I really don't. But you know what I do? I mean, maybe sometimes, but what I do know is they watch me.
Mm,
You know,
mhm.
they see how I behave. So I can't tell my kids that I believe in being honest if they see me kind of, maybe taking advantage of something in some other place where it's, gray area honest or something like that. Or
Yeah.
if I say to be kind and then they see me yelling at someone on the freeway for road rage or something like that. Like it's just like they follow your example. And in many ways, I think of employees that way. Not that they're children or should be treated like
No,
children,
no, 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 no.
but they watch you like, okay, Brett, well, you say this is our core values, but in this meeting, you lost your temper and you were a jerk.
Mm,
You don't do that here.
right.
You have to just be really aware. I've had to become acutely aware of my behavior and how I'm treating people and how I'm leading. Because I
Hmm.
feel like you can read the values on a wall, like I said, or you can see the people that are leaders in the business actually just leading by example.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think you're onto something. And again, not taking away that there's differences between children and adults, but statistically speaking, and this is one thing that I preach to my leadership cohorts, is that when you think about positive versus constructive feedback, children are a 5-to-1 ratio. Oftentimes as adults, we think it drops. It actually increases to 6-to-1 ratio.
Hmm.
And every single time I put out that stat, I get the same reaction from to, oh, really? Like I wouldn't have thought that. So everything that you're saying in short, Brent, tracks with me as well, in the sense that when we're thinking about leadership change, and transformational leadership, it's really about what people see that you're doing versus what you're writing down in an email or on your walls.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And my little guy is 10, and I tend to agree with the same thing. I feel like he doesn't listen to a thing. But then when I hear him in the backseat of the car with his friends and he talks about my work ethics, or he talks about when I'm traveling to do speaking engagements and stuff like that, it's like I turn into this proud peacock mom.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
listens and he sees. Yeah, I think another part of this is um, if people are exploring or they're trying to do what you've asked them to do and a mistake is made and you come down with a sledgehammer publicly or even privately,
It shuts it off.
that just puts like a lid on innovation and change and
Mhm.
disruption. So you have to be comfortable with mess ups,
Yes.
and it's okay. And hopefully we learn from those and we don't make the same mistakes 2 and 3 and 4 times, because that I think is just okay. Now you're not now you're not trying. But
No.
if there's 1 time, 2 times something's happening, it's like, okay, let's learn from that and move on. And actually, in a way, praise them for trying to do something different or something new. If there is fear throughout the organization of what their manager or even an executive is going to call them out, or maybe they'll get fired, or there's that, then they're just going to just stay really keep their head down and just do the minimum that's asked for them so they don't pop their head up and feel like they're at risk. And so that's something that I've learned through the years of just like a first reaction is like, are you kidding me? Why would you do that? Is what's in my head. And then
Mm,
what comes out is like, okay, well, why did that happen? explain to me what's going on, what should we do to fix it, and
Mhm.
uh, the way the message is received can impact future actions by employees in
Absolutely.
the way that they feel.
And everything that you've just said absolutely resonates. And thank you for being vulnerable because, as a leader, we always have an internal dialogue versus our external dialogue. And so it's real in the sense that judgment can creep in when we're dealing with team members that are maybe new to the organization or they're looking to scale a skill or leadership style. And what's really amazing about what you just said is that within split seconds, you're able to turn that judgment into curiosity. And I think that's a huge, huge thing that leaders are a huge skill set that leaders really ought to be grappling to, especially right now, to ensure that their team members feel psychologically safe and that they want to be innovative and try new things. Because to your point, I agree 100%. It just puts a lid on it if our internal voices actually come out, even in some capacity.
Sure.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So when you're thinking about leaders in a startup and or scaling company, and there's constant changes, what advice would you give to them to ensure that there's a continuum?
Roll with it.
Tell us more. What do you mean roll with it?
Well, I mean, you can't beat yourself up over like pivots in the business or changes or, surprises that happen. You have to be, to a large degree, just comfortable with today is going to be different than tomorrow.
Mm,
So, on one hand, I was a vice president of marketing at Hewlett Packard. Um, Probably, I mean, it might sound lofty, but there are probably 10,000 of them. I think my employee number was something like 298,000. So, I mean, I was a rounding error essentially in their business. So at that stage of business, that size of business, things are very programmatic.
yeah.
There's procurement. There's just a lot of kind of like, this is how we do it type of thing. You're in the building and hopefully hyper growth stage in a small startup. And so those things are just going to come at you. Somebody overspent on a business trip or but with good intentions, but it kind of blew your budget for the month. Or
Mm,
there's just kind of things that will come to your desk that you didn't plan for. And that's what I mean by roll with it. It's like, okay, that's not the end of the world. Shows us a way that we can improve. But if you get really hung up on, we've made 10 mistakes today and uh, it's not going to work. So you have to be flexible, you have to be agile, and I
mm,
would say embrace it. That's what I mean
mm.
by roll with it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm really appreciating your time today here, Brett. Tell us a
Sure.
little bit more about Every and where people can get a hold of your website, your contact information, and really learn more about your products and services.
Yeah, well, I think generally the reason we started the business is the payroll system in America is failing workers. 68% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. So
Mhm.
that means that if you're an employer, essentially 7 out of 10 people are in your business are in one way or another concerned, stressed, frustrated, preoccupied with a financial outcome. And most of that happens because there's a mismatch in timing between, in this 2 week pay cycle. And that is really kind of constructed 60, 70 years ago and just really hasn't changed.
Mhm.
So what we set out to do is to just break that apart. Well, and because of this, these people being on, living paycheck to paycheck, excuse me, there's things like payday loans and credit cards and checking account or savings account overdraft fees that are all of these almost predatory practices or industries that are taking advantage of these people. So my goal is like I'd love to put payday lenders like out of business because what we do is we unlock the wages that you've earned when you've earned them. Like when I was a much younger, my grandpa would mow his lawn. And at the end of the day, or the end of the time when I mow his lawn, he'd give me a $10 bill and a glass bottle of Coke. Coca-Cola, and we'd sit on the front porch. But I had that immediate, like, I mow the lawn, I get paid. What the expectation of workers is now. There's Venmo, there's Stripe, there's PayPal, there's Zelle, there's all of these different, like, you can move money quickly. So what we do is either through we have a Visa card where we can put money instantly when you finish a delivery or any job. We can put money instantly on the card, or we can do a same day ACH transfer. So we're a full featured payroll platform that can serve W-2s and 1099s and pay them instantly. And so what we see with that with companies is that's a tangible benefit for recruiting and retention, especially in the gig economy.
Yes.
Where you have delivery drivers or contingent workforces, staffing, those types of things. As soon as they finish a shift, they get their money. They work Christmas Eve, they get paid.
Right.
Holidays, non-holidays, or whatever. So we're here to break up the traditional payroll cycle. And I like to disrupt businesses. I like to build things with good people, and we're having a lot of fun.
Amazing. Again, thank you so much for your time, Brent. And Brett, excuse me. And how can we stay connected with you? Are you on LinkedIn, through your website?
Sure. I am on LinkedIn, Brett Barlow. Our website is, and please feel free to connect with me, anyone. Our website is eberee.com. Lots of information there, and we can do demos, or we can just kind of explain our services to people, whatever you like. We have kind of contact information there, or you can reach out to me directly via LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being on our show today.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It's an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Human Side of Business podcast. I'm glad you could join us. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to stay updated with our latest content, make sure to visit our website. The link can be found in the episode description, where you can subscribe to the podcast, sign up for our newsletter, and learn more about our whole person leadership services. Sounds interesting? Explore the Whole Person Leadership Cohort by Intuitive Performance, a unique program that offers unparalleled support to managers on every step of their leadership journey. Our program features evidence-based assessments, workbooks, group coaching, and interactive learning experiences to help you level up your leadership skills. Reach out today to apply to one of our upcoming cohorts. Until next time, take care and stay curious.